So as you see, I already have a project set up. This one is the test project, and this one is the project that we are going to write test for it. And I've called my project my test project, and I call the service, like when I'm going to have a service for this project, I will add a dot service, and then when it has a UI, it's going to have, like, since I do view UIs, it's going to have a kebab case name with my test project with no service after it. And the test project has just gonna have the same name but with the tests. Some people will also do the same namespaces on the test project as the normal project, so they can do some refactoring tricks with Visual Studio. I think VS Code also do that to create the functions on the other project, but we are not going to do that right now because I just want to, like, keep it really simple and show you how is it easy to, like, create one test and just start from there. And before we start writing tests, I would like to introduce you to some libraries I'm using. We are going to use .NET 6, but if you are going to use .NET Core 3.1, that's also the same. There's no difference. Mostly it's going to be the same. In the project, this one is fine, so we are using EF Core, and we are going to use Postgres with EF Core. And the setup is under the domain folder if you are going to download the code and check it out. And as normal, we have an application DB context, we have some entities, we are going to have like a shop model kinda. We're gonna have some products, stock, and then order items and stuff like that. We already have set up our migrations, and we have this DI to add our domain database to the dependency injection pipeline. And in programs CS, in .NET Core 3.1 case, in startup.cs, I'm going to just introduce it to the services, and that's it. The library I want to also that I want you to also check out is Mediator. Probably most of you have heard it or even are using it, or maybe a similar one to this one. If you know, you can also comment it down. This is really good for isolating your code. So most people are using it for separating the commands and queries in their codes, but which I do also the same. But this is not just for that. It's so if you have, like, for example, let's say you have create product command. This will take your code out of your controller and then put it into like just one function, and then you will test that function. You don't need to have a really long controller and then if all of the codes are like dirty like spaghetti. No, don't do that. Just take your logic and put it into these commands, and then like call that command from your controller. In this project, we are not going to do anything with the controllers. We are going to work around the application folder here, and I have already a directory for commands, and then probably we're gonna have a directory for queries. But let's also get to the test project, because here I also have some stuff I would like to introduce. So we are using XUnit testing. The thing with XUnit, which is different than the normal Microsoft unit testing, is that the XUnit will isolate each test. So when you have a fact, this fact will run separately than the next fact. Like when each function runs, the whole project will get reinitialized, the whole test project. And this is like simulating a request. So when a request comes to your application, it creates a scope. In .NET Core, it will create a scope. And while that scope is running and the request becomes a response, everything is just for this request. And when the other one comes in parallel, then another instance gets created, and then that's the same. So when you are running your tests, each test should not do anything with the other one. That's fine, and that's the best way to isolate your code and your tests. So the other thing that I would like to consider is the fluent assertions. I know that XUnit has like great assert methods, but fluent assertions will make it really simple, like grammatic. It says, like, for example, let's say you have product dot, let's say, name, or let's say owner ID, and then it should not be null. So you simply write product dot owner ID dot should, which is a method, and then like dot not be null. And then when you read it, it's like a sentence, and then you can put a message there that why it should not be null, what you expected. So whoever is reading the test can also, like, it be like also documentation. This part, and then the other part is that my application, my test, is going to have an app settings as well, since I'm going to use the DB context here with the test database. So I only have the connection string here, but for that you need to, because here it's not like in the normal project, you have to include your app settings in the output folder. So you have to add this part to your CS project. In Visual Studio, if you're doing Visual Studio, this you don't need to do this yourself. You can just right click on the app settings and then do properties, and in the properties panel you can just like copy always I don't remember completely, but I think it's the first one or the second row, but I forgot the key to that. And beside that, we also have some setups. The test base is an abstract class which every fact or test is going to inherit this. And we also have the configuration factory, which simply will just give us a configuration. And we also have the DB context factory. This one is important. I have a bad experience of not doing this, because what most people don't know is that when a user comes to when a request comes, .NET Core will create a scope, and the DB context by default has the scope in the dependency injection has the scope level, which means that on the whole way that the user comes as a request and gets out as a response, your DB context is the same. So if in one function you initialize or you read an entity from your DB context and then you don't save, for example, and then you get out of this function and then you read the same entity and then you change it and try to save it, it's going to tell you that this entity is already being tracked and you cannot do anything with it, so because you already have opened it somewhere else. So with having that in mind, I had a problem which I think I have not planned to show this, but I will. So if you go to Medium, I already have an article about the problem I got myself into with this. If I find my this one, the issue was that I did not reinitialize my DB context every time, and it caused me that my DB context be shared in the whole process of being used by the commands of my applications. So for example, for testing, I loaded some entities and I wanted to do some tests on them, but loading them was not part of the actual test. So when they were being loaded, the method was trying to save it, but it was failing, and I had no idea at the beginning why is it happening, and then after a while I changed some stuff which caused some bug. You can read this, and then this can come in handy to you too. I will share this in the description, but I resolved it by changing how I'm using DB context in my tests. So I created a DB context factory, and every time that I'm going to read an entity for doing tests on it in my tests, I just do run with DB context, and then it will give me a new DB context. I read it, and then it's closed. It will dispose it, and then I get my entity. So this way, the second DB context that I'm actually doing the test with will not track this entity anymore, and it's going to have its own tracking. This way, this is also isolated, because This will not happen in your actual code, because you will not load something for testing, because when you are loading something in the front end and sending it to the back end, it's not on the same DB context anymore. It's not on the same transaction. There are some data on the front end, you are saving it to the back end, and then you have a new DB context. So this will help you to achieve that, and I'm going to show you how. So with that, let's get started with some unit testing. We are going to test with create product command tests. Let's see. There is one other function which I forgot to describe it to you. I just wrote it myself. This is the GetDTO function. I always have a data directory, and then this GetDTO will read some JSON files, which is going to be our DTO. We assume that we got them from the front end, and then we are going to run them, feed them to our SUT, system under test. And the way that it works is that you just give the name of the DTO that you want to read, and then it will look into the same directory with the same name as your under test class. So if you have like create product command tests, you should have a create product command test directory under data, and then you say, okay, create product.json or whatever name you want. And then you will put it like, and then it will read it, deserialize it, and will give it to you as however you want and whatever you want to do with it.